What is up, everybody? Chris Fluke here, Chris Fluke Podcast, episode number 93. Today, we're going to be talking about one of my favorite shows on Amazon right now. One of my favorite shows of all time, potentially, The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. We're going to be talking about work. We're going to be talking about parenting, coaching, improving as a person. And lastly, a little bit of quote from one of the great presidents, Teddy Roosevelt. Now, Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, great comedy, right? It takes place in the 50s. Midge Maisel is this divorced. Long story short, her husband was going to get into comedy. He stunk. She started telling jokes. She was great, super successful. This season, she had a bit of a collapse now. She had a bit of a meltdown, a breakdown, where she got fired from one job for making a joke at somebody's expense that was hit a little too close to home, right? I mean, after all, isn't that comedy? But anyhow, Maisel says, you know what, F this, I'm going to do things my way now. I'm not going to be an opening act for any of these, snobbish celebrities. I'm doing my own thing. I'm going to work where I want to work, and I'm going to do what I want to think. Now, there's a character in the show played that portrays Lenny Bruce, right? The legendary comedian who back in the day, he got arrested. He would do a show, and cops would be waiting there and to arrest him for obscenities and all this other stuff, right? This is the 50s. He was one of those groundbreaking comics in real life. This character is a part of the show. And they have an interesting relationship. They're pretty tight. They appreciate each other's personalities. They understand each other's struggles, and they know that Midge Maisel thinks that Lenny Bruce is the greatest, right? But Lenny sees something in Midge, and he tries to help her when and where he can, right? So he tries to help her with the job, and she says no, basically, okay? She turns it down, and after, Lenny Bruce sells out Carnegie Hall, Midge thinks that he and Lenny are going to have this wonderful evening out. But it turns out Lenny's pissed, right? He's like, I tried to get you this job and you said no. And that's okay, right? If your schedule says you can't do it, if something comes up, fine. But I heard that you wouldn't even take the phone call. And then he goes on this, he tears her up, man. He lets her know. It's not like a pep talk. It's a more like, don't you screw this up talk. He looks at her and he tells her, like, you need to do the work. It's like you have these high plans, right? You have these goals, these ambitions and all that, and that's fine. But you don't get to those goals, you don't get to those ambitions if you don't work. He says, don't plan, work. Just work and keep working. That's the only way you're going to get to where you want to get to, right? And I think back to my time, as a personal trainer at LA Fitness, working 30 plus hours there, working at another gym right down the road, coaching football, coaching wrestling, driving all around the Lehigh Valley. What did that teach me? Yeah, it sucks. You were getting paid $7 something a session, right, at LA Fitness. But what did I get out of that? Work, right? And then what does that work get you? It gets you experience. It tells you what you want to do and what you don't want to do. And it starts to, start that funnel where you start doing a bunch of stuff. The same thing I talk about training kids. Same thing I talk about with just being a well-rounded person. Do a lot and then start funneling and make it smaller, right? The pyramid from the episode a couple podcast episodes ago. You start real wide, and then you start narrowing it down and doing the things that you want to do, right? That's what it is, right? There's a moment for all of us. This is Lenny Bruce telling her, there's a moment, man. The window of opportunity is only open for so long. You can't let it slip by. That advice right there is that those opportunities, when they come, you better be ready for it. You don't say, give me 2 months to get prepared. It's like any moment, like tomorrow, if something happens, I'm willing to throw this. Not throw this out in this sense. I have my family here, right? But if a job opportunity comes up that's great, I'm in. If another opportunity comes up that's something, I'm going to find a way to do it, right? You always have to be ready for that new thing, right? COVID happened in the past, and a lot of people use that opportunity to grow as a business, as a person, whatever it may be. And a lot of people did the opposite, right? They stayed home, they wallowed, they started to feel sorry for themselves. You have a choice here, right? Everything can be, there's always a window of opportunity, right? And as long as you have that window open, as long as the window's open, the breeze can come in. And that breeze is the opportunity, right? If that window's closed, if you close that window yourself, right? And if you don't say yes to things, not that you have to say yes to everything, just that you keep that window open just in case if that one great opportunity does come in. But if you close it off and you don't even want to hear that stuff, or you don't even want to give yourself a chance to have something come in there, right? You're not going to be able to grow as a person. So, in this kind of talk, man, I wasn't even planning on going into this episode of Maisel because, it's not like, it didn't even cross my mind really how pivotal this scene is. But, I was having a talk with somebody yesterday. He's right out of college, and he wants to start working, and he's got his hopes set up high, which is totally fine, right? But you got to work to get there, right? Teddy Roosevelt had that quote, I think it was Teddy, we talked about the man in the arena, right? Where a lot of people on the outside, man, they have opinions, and they could jeer at you and they could cheer you and all that. But what really matters is the person in the arena. What really matters is that person that's putting in the work, right? And you have to work. You have to work and just work and just work. And eventually, I'm not saying you got to work 80 hours, but I'm saying you got to be in the game. The only way you get better at the game is by playing the game. And you have to be in the game if you want to reach new levels, right? So how do we get better? Another Roosevelt quote, I guess. This is a Teddy Roosevelt episode. Do what you can with what you've got where you are, right? So whatever the opportunity is, do what you can with it, right? And I think this idea kind of touches on parenting, coaching, being a person in general, right? Do what you can with what you've got where you are. If we look about this in the strength and conditioning world and the fitness world, right? Say you're totally inactive. You haven't worked out really ever in your life, and now you're approaching 60 and you're overweight. I was just talking to somebody about this last night. Do what you can with what you've got where you are. That might mean you walk to the stop sign and you come back, and that takes you 1.5 minutes, but guess what? That 1.5 minutes is more than you did for the last 30 years, all right? You started putting yourself first, and you started with something, right? And something is always better than nothing. Do what you can with what you've got where you are, right? Don't forget that. Don't start thinking about all these grand things. Don't start thinking about how your neighbor does 90-minute runs every day, right? That doesn't matter. What matters is you and doing a little bit more each day, right? So that kind of starts circling back to all the other aspects that I kind of like to focus on. The parenting aspect of this, right? You got to put in the work, right? You got to do what you can with what you got where you are. That's what parenting is, right? Nobody could prepare for being a parent. Nobody. No matter how well you think, I'm going to do things this way, I'm going to do things that way, I'm going to do this, that, and the other thing, right? But when that little kid gets in this world, man, things start to change. You think you're going to be able to drop the hammer. The other night, my daughter didn't want to take her shoes off for 35 minutes. And it's 7 o'clock. She's tired. We got to get to bed. She doesn't want to take her shoes off. And I said, girl, I'm not playing this game. Take your shoes off. I want to wait for Mom to get home. Mommy's not getting home till 9. It's 7:20 right now. You got to get your shoes off. We're going to bed. We're having this back and forth. We're having this talk. I'm like, I'm getting ready for bed. I'm going to brush my teeth. I'm going to shower, do all this stuff, right? I start brushing my teeth, and she wants to brush her teeth. Can you help me? I'm like, you got to help me out. We've been going back and forth here for 20 minutes. I need you to help me out here. I need you to take your shoes off. I'll gladly help you. But until that point comes, there's going to be no help coming from me right now. I don't even know if that's the right thing to do, but that's what I felt in the moment, right? Fine. Puts her toothbrush down. She doesn't brush her teeth. I brush mine. I'm like, you don't take your shoes off here. I'm not spending time arguing back and forth. I'm taking a shower. I want a shower. I'm like, okay. Now it's 7:35. She's usually sleeping by 7:30. Now she wants to take a shower, which she usually plays in. If you ever saw my daughter, she has this curly hair. So now I have to get the conditioner and go through her hair and get all the knots out. This is a bit of a process here. So I'm like, all right, well, I guess we're not going to bed anytime early tonight. Guess what happens when she wants to shower? She takes her shoes off in like 25 seconds. So we spent over 30 minutes, I think. I'm going to say 35 minutes. Let's just say 30 minutes, a round number. We spent 30 minutes arguing over this shoe situation. Then I say I want to shower. She wants to shower. She takes her shoes off in like 30 seconds. Whatever. I guess that's parenting, right? Do what you can with what you got where you are. Now, when we start talking about the importance of being a parent, like everything, I was listening to this, it's old, man. It's like 2 years. I'm like 2 years behind on all my podcast listening, right? Because I end up going through all of them because I'm a weirdo and I want to listen to all the episodes. So I'm listening to Jordan Peterson interview this guy, Richard Tremblay, Canadian man. That's why the pronunciation is Richard instead of Richard, right? And anyway, what he looked at is children, right? So do what you can with what you've got where you are. That's important to remember that, but it's not an excuse to not try. It's not an excuse to say you don't know any better. You need to kind of seek some stuff out. And you need to understand that everything that we do does kind of matter, right? Every decision that you make matters. So when we have a child now, let's say you have a kid. Tremblay set out to try to understand, certain dynamics in children, certain behavior. How far back does it go? Can we predict, can we find out if this kid that's 28 and he's violent and he's a criminal, can we start backtracking this thing? Can we follow kids over decades and see if there's things that happen in the early years, or even backtrack even a little bit more, when that kid's in the womb, say, can we find out some of these markers here that might give us an indication of whether or not that person's behavior is going to be out of whack? So we start to look at 2 to 3 year olds. And he found, well, as he's looking at these children, he found out in that 2 to 3 age range, that is when kids are the most violent ever. Now, they're not doing physical harm to people because they're still small and they can't bite that hard, they can't punch that hard, they can't kick that hard. Let me tell you, they can kick pretty good. I've experienced a terrible kick to an area that I don't even want to mention, courtesy of my daughter when she was sleeping. But anyhow, that's besides the point. These 2 to 3 year olds can be very violent. That is when he found that that's when people are the most violent. And that goes to show that society, so it's not that society makes us violent per se. It is that we have this, inherent violence in us, and it is society's job to civilize us, right? To make us more adjusted to what human beings should act like, right? So he's seeing that this 2 to 3 year age, that's when the kids are the most violent. So it's not like they're watching, a lot of violent stuff at the time. So he starts looking at the numbers here. 31% of the kids were in this nonviolent class. 51%, almost 52% were in that middle range where they had violent tendencies and they had nonviolent tendencies. And then 17% had strong violent tendencies. And as he's looking over this stuff, he starts finding out, that 17%, the high tendency group, they do become more violent as adults. The violent 3 or 4 year old is going to be the violent 23, 24 year old, all right? So what do we have to do there? We have to get these kids more adjusted. We as a society need to kind of squash that. One way that he did that, some of these kids had this antisocial behavior here. So he started pairing up some of these kids with pro-social kids, the kids that were well adjusted to the world. You can't blame you can't blame a 4-year-old if they're not well, if they're having a trouble with interacting with others, if they've never interacted with others before. Why haven't they interacted with others before? Maybe it's a parenting thing, maybe it's just some troubles in their world that's going on that we don't even understand, right? So what they found is that if you pair some pro-social kids with some antisocial kids, it starts to fix that behavior a little bit. Their behavior can be molded. Society can mold behavior in a way for the good. Get these kids well adjusted to being well and interacting well in the classroom. Get these kids to be a little bit more social, communicate using their words better instead of using their actions to let us know how they're feeling, okay? Now, Tremblay's opinion on the matter is this. We need to take our resources and we need to put in those preschools. We need to put in those kindergartens. I remember I had a talk with a dad and he's like, yeah, we're looking for preschools for him. He's like, you know what, it doesn't matter. The boys, they just wrestle, the girls do this or that. And then at the time, I didn't have this knowledge in my mind. But now that I understand this, I'm like, wow, that guy was totally wrong. It's like the same thing with coaching athletics. I feel like we need to have the better coaches in the younger levels. The same thing with teachers and education. Those early years are so important, to socialize kids, to teach kids, not just the teaching part of it, but just to show them those pro-social things, right? To get them working as a team with others. To maybe squashing some of those violent tendencies, right? So instead of putting all of our resources, say, in that, this is Tremblay's opinion. Instead of putting all of our resources in that end-of-life care, say, like, we're fighting to keep people alive in a lot of these, what he called, like, daycares for the elderly. He's like, we could take some of those resources. It's not that we ignore that population, but if we took the amount of resources that we throw towards that end-of-life daycare and put it towards that beginning-of-life daycare, and by daycare he meant those preschools and kindergartens, we would have a much better society. When he started looking at some of these kids, he found that a lot of these kids are coming from homes that, high school diploma, maybe high school dropout homes, right? So from the mother, the mother is doesn't have a high education, right? So you look at some of these other countries. What's the best way to curb, to slow down the number of births, right? You educate the women, right? Let them know that they have a choice in this world, that they're not just a childbearing individual. They could go out and get a job. They could go out and get an education. They could go out and do their things. And what does that do? It slows down the pregnancies, right? Because more children in unstable environments is just going to lead to more trouble, right? So if we could slow that number down, maybe we're better. How do you slow that number down? You have to educate girls at these young ages, at this elementary, middle school, high school level. It's like, girls, you are a vital part of society, right? You can be whatever you want to be here. You don't have to follow these molds And if you could educate these girls at a younger age, then they're going to be more well-adjusted mothers. And a more well-adjusted mother is going to have a better child, right? A more well-adjusted mother might choose a spouse that hopefully has his crap together and doesn't bolt on the kids, right? Because we know that fatherless homes are a big-time problem too, right? And it's like, is a fatherless home the cause of the situation, or is it like, you know what, I'm not going to get into that part of it all because I'm not an expert in it. But all I know is this: I have a young girl, and I hope that she gets educated in a way that, like, not just from her parents, more than just from her parents, right? We're gonna talk to her about what we know, but we only know what we know, right? Do what you can with what you got where you are, and then from there, we have to have some good schooling going on here. We have to have positive role models in her life to let her know that she is an important cog in this machine of civilization, and everything that she does in the future here, everything that matters, right? Everything matters from the early age all the way up to adulthood, right? I feel like that topic went a little bit longer here, and I want to kind of tie into this. Is that I was just at a park this week and I saw some of the worst behavior ever. Emmy met a little friend, dude. The story's nutty. Family comes and works out. Emmy and this girl, they don't really talk much when they're here. They see each other at the park. This girl's a little bit over 2 years older than Emmy, and they're like best friends. They're holding hands. They're running around. This girl got our daughter to navigate this little rope thing, to go down this slide that's like 20 feet in the air, super twisty slide. She would never do that with me. She would never do that with her mother, but she had that older friend with her, and that older friend was so good to her, and she talked her through it, right? And I think back to the zone of proximal development that this Russian man, I think his name was Vygotsky, came up with in terms of education. Is that you need to kind of teach your kids. You need to find ways to get your kids to reach a little bit further than the current level. And what this girl did, having a positive peer in her life, in Emmy's life that day, got her to reach to a new height that she never thought of reaching before. She never would have navigated this course, and she got scared, and she wanted me to stand by because I was there to help her if she needed help, because if she fell, it would probably hurt. She would have got caught, tangled up in ropes like a spider web. But anyhow, she did it. And then, here I'm thinking this slide might be an issue, and I can't get up there. I'm too big. I'm an adult. I cannot get up there. I cannot navigate this. It's for kids only. I literally can't get to the top of this. It's like 5 feet up, right? But I still can't get up there, really. And I'm like, well, I don't know if she's going to go down the slide. I look up. She's not there. She's at the bottom already. I'm like, well, I guess Emmy learned that she could do this today. Why? Because she was around a positive influence, right? A pro-social influence. She's at the park. She's learning, right? Learning good. The flip side of that, there's these old kids there, man. They're talking. They're using some of the worst language ever. There's some girls that are just being vicious, being nasty, throwing water in boys' faces, smacking them. And I'm like, what in the world is going on here? Then they get picked up by their mommy and all these tough girls. There's dudes there that were just as bad too, doing standing backflips, punching signs. I mean, why is a 13-year-old boy at a park with little kids, right? That's number one. Number two, he punches a sign, thinks he's a tough guy. Then he shakes his hand. He's like, oh. I see him shaking his hand like it hurt, right? I'm like, well, you're the idiot that just punched a sign. Anyhow, that's besides the point. Let's get back to Tremblay. Early childhood stuff, right? Some of this behavior, man, it could have got squashed at a young age, but it didn't, right? Some of these girls being nasty, using vulgar language, punching people, that stuff would be a poor influence on a younger sibling. And it would be a poor influence if that was a mother on their child here, because remember, more is caught than taught. Your behavior is going to get caught by some young kid. And these little kids at the park are seeing this, and they're wondering, like, oh, she just used a bad word, a 6-year-old told me. I'm like, yeah, you're right, she did use a bad word, and that's just something that we don't use, but I don't know. I can't comment on why she used that word. I don't know why she did that. And all this stuff's going on. I'm just like, why are these kids here? Hopefully these young kids see this as a poor example, not as a positive example. And that was just my... I'm sure it's parks all around the world. It's like once the school lets out and those middle school age, those 5th, 6th, 7th graders start showing up, it's like, well, time to go home if you got a 4-year-old, because you're going to see some mayhem. You got kids playing tag, running full speed. I don't know how somebody didn't get barreled over. They're like knifing through the swings. Like there's swings going on. I'm like, how's nobody getting drop kicked by a swing right now? Anyhow, that's where we are. And what does it mean as a parent? We don't want our kids to be like that park kid, right? Sorry, park kids. Sorry, parents of the park kids, but I'm calling you out. I'm not using names. I don't even know who you are, but I don't like your behavior, and I don't want my kid to ever act like you. So everything that we do now at the age of 4 with them is going to be to not have that kind of antisocial park behavior, right? To not have that violent behavior. We're going to try to squash it. We're going to try to move forward. We're going to try to be better. Do what you can with what you got where you are. That's what we're talking about right now. With coaching, it's the same thing. Remember what Lenny Bruce told Maisel, man. Work, just work. Don't plan. Get in the game. Stay in the game. Work at the game. That's what we can do, right? We need experience in everything, right? You need to have experience, whether you're seeing a doctor, you feel more comfortable with an experienced doctor than an inexperienced doctor. You're gonna feel better about your kid going with an experienced teacher than an inexperienced teacher. Same with being a coach, right? You want that first-time coach that doesn't have a clue, or do you want somebody that's been in the game for a while, that knows how to handle team environments, that knows how to talk to different kids, different situations, handle the parents and all that stuff? Our methodology, man, we need to have a certain methodology if we're coaching people, right? Because in order for us to do the best job that we can, to put in that good work, in order for us to develop a positive and a good methodology, we need to have the experience, right? And in order for us to put in the good work, we need to have a clear and concise plan on what we're doing, right? And I remember I saw this quote, right? You know what's dangerous is lacking strength, right? This is one woman's example. Strength training is not dangerous. Well, it can be dangerous, right? But that's not the most dangerous part of it all. Lacking strength is the most dangerous, right? And when we look at this, we look at people falling, right? Why are they falling? They don't have the strength, they don't have the balance, they don't have the stability, right? They don't have the power to catch themselves. You know that little tumble, you know when you trip on something and that one foot comes out to catch yourself from falling? That ability to move your body fast, that fast twitch ability, right? It's gonna diminish as we get older. But we could train to prevent that slow down process, right? If we could maintain status quo, we're winning against Father Time. It's when we see that decrease, when we cannot catch ourselves, that we end up falling and then we end up getting seriously injured, right? It's like that hip, you see the hunched posture, you see the slow moving, right? The elderly, the older person loses that ability to generate power, generate force, generate speed, right? So they walk slow, they can't stay upright, they can't extend their hips all the way up and stand and maintain good posture as they move through stuff, right? We could diminish that, right? At the age of 60, you have 80% of your strength, say, right? That you would in your 30s. And that was found out by Theodore Heidegger, Physiology of Strength. 1960, I don't know when that book was written, late 50s, early 60s. Anyhow, 80% of your strength at the age of 60 that you had in your 30s, right? So why don't you build strength in your 30s? Why don't you get as strong as you can right now? Not at the detriment to other qualities like cardiovascular fitness, right? You don't want to get out of breath walking up your stairs, but get your strength levels up now because you're going to be stronger at the age of 60. And if you're stronger at the age of 60, you're going to be healthier, right? That's my coaching methodology. How did I find that out? Through experience, right? You're talking to the elderly, you're seeing what's going on. You're seeing what's going on at the school level, right? You're seeing kids that can't even do proper body weight stuff. You're like, what's the solution here? Stability, strength. How do you get stability? With strength. How do you get strength? With stability. Those two things kind of go back and forth. And then the reason for all this is what I just explained. Like, that's what you need to explain to these kids. Like, it doesn't matter, really. Like, all right, cool. You want to be an 11-year-old all-star? Great. I want you to be able to do a perfect push-up. I want you to be able to climb a rope. I want you to be able to jump rope. That's what matters to me. These are the foundational skills that we can build off. Why is that important? Because if we learn these now, we're going to be better when we're 15, and we're going to be better off when we're 20, and then 30, and then 40, right? We need to get the foundation. We need to start building strength. We need to continue to build strength. We need to continue to build strength for as long as possible, all right? So we could be a healthy 60-year-old that if we do take that tumble, right, if we do catch our foot on something, we don't end up face planting, we could catch ourselves with that fast, twitch, explosive behavior. Lastly, do what you can with what you've got where you are. I heard a terrible story. Well, not terrible in the sense, but basically we have a friend here that does some work for us, man, and the realtor that they use calls them up and says, you got to knock off basically a third of the price for their house. And at this point, this person felt defeated. You could see it in their eyes, right? You could see that they were probably throwing up their hands and saying, well, we're not getting what we wanted for our house. We're not going to be able to save what we want to save. We're going to be able to pay off what we owe, have a little bit extra, but not with the plan that we had, right? And Marisa and I, we said no. We said they knew. This buyer knew. They signed the paperwork. They knew what the deal was. Don't accept. Don't take that smaller offer. Keep the place. 1/3 of the price they try to reduce. Who reduces 1/3 of the price? Marisa has experience with this type of stuff. I don't. This person, they did not. All right? They didn't know what to do. They went to the realtor. They relied on the realtor, and they believed that the realtor is trying to do them a good, do them a solid, right? But because they didn't have the experience in this kind of situation, Marisa kind of just stepped in and was like, you can't accept that. You tell them no. The house says as is, you're selling it as is. And that's what it is. We're not going to do this. We're not knocking a third of the price off, all because of one issue, all right? This issue is not that complex, man. They signed the paperwork. They want to rent it out to tenants. They're worried about one thing. And because of this lack of experience here, this individual could have gotten, I don't want to say swindled, but they could have lost out on that $50,000. Now, I don't know what the result is here, and I'm probably not going to ask. All I hope is that if that person is listening, I hope that they stay firm. I hope that they, as a couple, as a family, gets what they deserve, gets what's on that piece of paper, all right? So that they can start to build a good, positive life wherever that takes them, right? So, remember now, man, like my boy Lenny Bruce said in Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, don't play and just work. Be ready. That window of opportunity is going to close on you, all right? When it's open, you need to do what you can to keep that window open. Like Krishnamurti said, the breeze will come in when that window is open. Now I'm paraphrasing. I probably butchered that quote, but that's basically what's going on here. Be ready for any opportunity that arises. The window of opportunity is small. When it shows up, you got to pounce on it, all right? Put in the work. You can't think you're better. I know you might have a goal, you might have an end game that you want to get to, but in order for you to get there, you got to take that step-by-step approach. The same way you would build strength, step by step. The same way you build cardiovascular fitness, step by step. A little bit over the long haul. That needs to be the plan. Get in the game, stay in the game. Don't be the man. Be the man in the arena, not the man in the stands. You know what I'm saying? And remember, do what you can with what you got where you are, as a parent, as a coach, as an individual, man. Keep moving forward. Chris Flick Podcast is available on YouTube, Spotify, Stitcher, Apple. I don't even know, Google Play. I'm not sure what else I missed. Like it, share it, get the word out there. We're trying to blow this thing up. You know what I'm saying? Peace, everybody.